Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Battle Through the Heavens based on novel. So let's start. Xiao Yan's face gradually became solemn as he watched the majestic Do Qi that suddenly surged out from Han Feng's body. He really did not expect this fellow to have taken half a step into the Do Zone class within these past 2 years. Although Han Feng currently only had half a foot into the class, anyone knew that as long as one had half a foot in, then one was already not very far from fully attaining that class. This half a foot would also allow Han Feng to far exceed an ordinary peak Do Huang expert. Adding the collaboration with his Sea Heart Flame, it was likely that his fighting strength would be truly able to stand shoulder to shoulder with a true elite Do Zone. Is that so? Xiao Yan smiled coldly. The dark green flame in his hand suddenly rose and was shrouded as they attacked. With a pull of his hand, the dark green flame was split apart and transformed into 2 clusters of flame. One was green and the other was invisible. Fallen Heart Flame. Han Feng's eyes stared intently at the cluster of invisible flame in Xiao Yan's right hand. His teeth-gnashing voice carried threads of cold wind as each word spilled out from his mouth. Only at this moment was the doubt in his heart completely settled. You have actually refined the Fallen Heart Flame. The majestic Do Qi that lingered on Han Feng's body writhed intensely, much like the interior of his heart. A moment later, a furious and disbelieving voice was finally emitted from his mouth. Congratulations, you have guessed correctly. Xiao Yan raised his brows and spoke mockingly toward Han Feng, whose face was as dark and solemn as the sky before a storm. The dark solemn expression on Han Feng's face began showing the trend of evolving into a much more ferocious state. How unexpected. It is really unexpected that did the Fallen Heart Flame not kill you, but also allowed you to achieve a great deal. That jade green flame of yours is actually the merger of the green lotus core flame and the Fallen Heart Flame. No wonder it has the ability to divide my Sea Heart Flame. Han Feng's dark, solemn voice carried a powerful pressuring Do Qi as it enveloped Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan raised his head to observe Han Feng in the distance, as he held the ruler's hilt tightly with both hands. A moment later, a cluster of surging Do Qi had already unleashed an eye-piercing intense glow that was just like a small-scale sun that no one dared to look directly at. Little bastard, go and die. Han Feng's eyes stared intently at the cluster of sun-like Do Qi in his hand. A moment later, he suddenly raised his head. His face was covered with a savage insanity. With a brutal cry, the cluster of majestic sun-like Do Qi shot explosively toward Xiao Yan. Radiant Seal. An eye-piercing light drew across the sky. The light faintly revealed a large palm that appeared to be a sun falling from the sky as it carried a frightening energy that caused one's hairs to stand on end. Flame-splitting tsunami. The emerald-like heavy Xian ruler was lifted high above Xiao Yan's head. An instant later, both of his arms suddenly hacked down with great force. 100-foot-long emerald energy glow shot out explosively from the tip of the ruler. That stance was as though it wanted to split the ground. Its momentum was frightening. This kind of terrifying destructive force was something that one could rarely see even during a decisive battle between peak Do Huangs. The energy wave that spread through the sky slowly scattered. The 2 bodies in the sky were slowly revealed. Han Feng was at this moment a little better. Senior, you will suffer the same loss twice. Looks like I have also overestimated you at this moment. Han Feng's expression had instantly turned extremely ugly. The strongest, angry Buddha lotus flame shape in the past was merged from the green lotus core flame and the bone-chilling flame. Since the bone-chilling flame was ranked a little higher on the heavenly flame ranking compared to the Fallen Heart Flame, it seemed that this current merger was weaker than that of the past from a certain point of view. However, the bone-chilling flame was Yao Lao's heavenly flame. Even though Xiao Yan could control it, it was basically impossible for him to reach the familiarity he had with the green lotus core flame. Therefore, the merger of those 2 heavenly flames would more or less have some conflict. Although this kind of conflict was difficult to sense under the suppression of Xiao Yan's powerful spiritual strength, it would still limited some of the strength of the fire lotus. The strength of the angry Buddha lotus flame may be extremely great, but it required quite a lot of strength to agglomerate. If the merger was interrupted during this period of time, the fire lotus would naturally fail to merge successfully. However, Xiao Yan had used the collision between the flame-splitting tsunami and the radiant seal earlier as cover as he quietly completed the merger of the fire lotus. It was little wonder why his expression would be so pale after the energy scattered. Xiao Yan raised his head and watched the dark and solemn face of Han Feng. He smiled and his finger gently flicked the fire lotus. The latter immediately drifted out slowly. The emerald fire lotus strangely began to expand upon leaving Xiao Yan's hand. Within the short blink of an eye, its palm-like size was expanded until it was around 5 feet wide. Raging dark green flames rose on it and set it off like a lotus platform that Buddha sat on. It appeared holy, and secretly contained a frightening destructive strength. Damn fellow! Han Feng clenched his teeth violently. He did not dare to slight it even a little. A low, deep roar suddenly sounded from his throat, and the deep blue flame from within his body erupted out unceasingly. Finally, it transformed into a deep blue fire sea that was around 70 to 80 feet wide. His body was at the middle of this sea of fire. Under Han Feng's gaze, Xiao Yan flicked his finger, and the slowly turning large green fire lotus trembled before it shot forward with an ear-piercing sound. With a green light, it flew towards the blue fire with heated winds. Sea heart magical beast. Han Feng watched the emerald flowing light that shot explosively over with a serious expression. His palm moved and a cry yelled out from his throat. Immediately, that enormous sea of fire churned intensely. The flame whizzed and rotated before actually becoming an extremely large dark blue beast. The appearance of this enormous beast caused some blood color to disappear from Han Feng's face. Clearly, this thing exhausted quite a bit of do qi. The size of the enormous beast was large, and was not the least bit smaller than the fighting form of the heaven-swallowing python. Its shape was like a lion, but it possessed a large scorpion-like tail. A deep blue-colored horn, that protruded from its head, displayed a flickering blue glow. The horn would occasionally sway, and tiny black scars would surface in the empty space. Xiao Yan was also startled when the large head of the deep blue enormous lion-like fire beast appeared. It was unexpected that Han Feng's control over the sea heart flame had already reached such a stage in the 2 years they had not met. Xiao Yan questioned himself, and found that it was likely that even the current him would have difficulty using a heavenly flame to agglomerate and form such a complex beast shape. Xiao Yan was shocked, but the emerald fire lotus, which had already locked onto its target, did not hesitate. It appeared to have teleported, and within a couple of flashes, it was only a short distance from Han Feng. The frightening wind was something that caused even the deep blue sea of fire spread throughout the sky to form some ripples. Gi. Han Feng's expression was extremely solemn as he stared at the large fire lotus that was coming at him head-on. The seal on his hand changed, and with a low cry, the large fire lion, that had been agglomerated from his own strength, raised its head and emitted a loud thunder-like roar. Its 4 hooves moved immediately as it became tank-like, and fearlessly charged toward the fire lotus. The frightening fire energy storm spread, and covered an area that was over 100 meters in radius. Even the people from both sides of the chaotic battle in the sky moved their bodies and fled in all directions in a miserable manner. They clearly understood that if they were to be struck by this thing, it was likely that they would suffer despite their strength. Therefore, a comical scene appeared. The fiery hot chaotic battle that was raging in the sky had, at this very moment, turned into a scene of frightened birds fleeing. Everyone abruptly fled the area. All that remained was a countless number of stunned gazes on the ground. Xiao Yan struck his palm out and a powerful force shook the gold-silver brothers until they stepped back rapidly. A faint paleness also surfaced on the latter's faces. Xiao Yan struck his palm out and a powerful force shook the gold-silver brothers until they stepped back rapidly. A faint paleness also surfaced on the latter's faces. Although they could contend with an elite dozong by joining hands, they would still end up losing if things really did drag on. In the past, Han Feng would have long escaped from the opponents pestering him to come and help them deal with Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan smiled coldly as he observed the gold-silver brothers whose faces were alternating between white and green. Xiao Yan did not grab his advantage and give chase. He turned around and watched the center of the frightening firestorm with a solemn expression. This kind of energy collision was something that caused even someone of his strength to feel afraid. I have really underestimated Xiao Yan. He was actually able to delay Han Feng even in such a situation. However, I wonder who will be victorious in the end. Countless numbers of gazers were stunned as they watched the firestorm that swept across the sky. Despite being a great distance away, they still felt their legs become wobbly. If this kind of explosion had been a little lower, it was likely that this city would have turned into a graveyard in an extremely short period of time. The strong from both sides, who had been engaging in an intense great battle in the sky earlier, had all descended from the sky in panic. This Xiao Yang fellow is really becoming more and more frightening. Lin Yang wiped the perspiration on his face while standing on the peak of a mountain, as he spoke with a bitter smile to Lin Xiuya and Liu Qing by the side. The three of them were currently elders of the inner academy. Xiao Li's figure rushed out on a treetop not far from the three of them. His expression was a little worried as he watched the firestorm that had basically covered the entire sky. Even though he had confidence in Xiao Yang, he could not help but feel uneasy in the face of such a frightening energy collision. After all, that Han Feng was not an ordinary person. During the 2 years he had muddled along within the Black Corner region, he had been repeatedly inquiring about information on the Black Alliance. The human figure that had suddenly appeared immediately gathered the gazes of everyone present. Although the human figure was shooting out at a very fast speed, there were still some sharp-eyed people who could identify him. Immediately, joyous voices sounded. "It's the Alliance head. He is alive." The tensed-up faces of those from the Black Alliance immediately became much more relaxed upon hearing these joyous cries. Xiao Li's eyes had suddenly become completely red when he heard the loud cry of those from the Black Alliance. A savage killing intent slowly climbed onto his cold face. He had already decided in his heart. If any mishap were to happen to Xiao Yang, he would get Han Feng to pay a price in blood today, even if he had to stake his life. Everyone, don't act disorderly. There is something not quite right. Su Qian's cry suddenly sounded when everyone's mood had sunk. It's Xiao Yang. He hasn't died. The inner academy's experts, who were dispirited, immediately cheered when they saw those familiar fire wings. The savageness on Xiao Li's face slowly withdrew as he watched the familiar fire wings with a stunned expression. His heart finally sighed heavily as he bitterly laughed. This fellow really doesn't allow one to relax. With the appearance of Xiao Yang's figure, the originally proud and laughing people from the Black Corner region became just like ducks with their throats pinched. "Little bastard, you dare!" Xiao Yang's eyes stared intently at Han Feng, whose internal do qi was blocked because of the backlash from the flame. A dark green flame wildly surged over his fist. The fist immediately contained an incomparably fierce force, as it ruthlessly smashed into his chest. A traitor who betrays his teacher deserves to die. Xiao Yang's face was covered with fresh blood. His chest rose and fell rapidly as his wings flapped slightly. A weak feeling was repeatedly emitted from his body, indicating that he had already reached his limit. Xiao Yang flapped the increasingly illusory wings on his back as his eyes stared intently at the unmoving Han Feng, who had smashed into the ground, forming an enormous pit. He could sense that the latter's breath might be extremely weak, but had not completely disappeared. Xiao Yang clenched his teeth ruthlessly as he shook his hand. An enormous heavy Xian ruler flashed and appeared. His hands held it tightly as he flapped the wings on his back. He circulated the little remaining do qi in his body and shot explosively toward Han Feng, who was lying on the ground with his last lingering breath. The aim was to give the latter a finishing blow. Save the Alliance head. Xiao Yang's action were instantly sensed by the experts from the Black Corner region. Their faces immediately changed drastically as a stern cry immediately sounded. They clearly understood the importance of Han Feng to the Black Alliance. If they lost Han Feng, it was likely that the large alliance would collapse. Stop them. Su Qian let out a cold cry the moment the experts from the Black Corner region moved. All the inner academy elders, who had long been waiting for an order, immediately moved. Han Feng was indeed right. Yao Xing's spiritual body is indeed in this little fellow's body. A ghastly strange laugh suddenly sounded in the sky the moment the heavy ruler smashed down. Immediately, a cluster of black fog strangely surfaced on the plains. The black fog had just appeared when a dark black chain that contained a deep luster suddenly shot out from the black fog. The metal chain's speed was extremely frightening. It was not far from Xiao Yang in an instant. The end of the metal chain was as sharp as a blade, and an unusual cold glint faintly seeped out from it. At this moment, Xiao Yan had also ran out of steam. Swinging the ruler, and unleashing his final attack, toward Han Feng, had already completely exhausted all his strength. Hence, he actually did not have the slightest strength to dodge the metal chain that was shooting toward him. Xiao Yang turned his head with great difficulty. The thing that was imprinted in his eyes was that a somewhat unusual black, enormous metal chain. This is those fellows from the Hall of Souls. The cluster of black fog shaped like a human figure was similar to what he had seen in the Great Plains of the Black Corner region swiftly flashed across his mind. This attacking method and the person in front of him were nearly identical. This is those fellows from the Hall of Souls. The cluster of black fog shaped like a human figure was similar to what he had seen in the Great Plains of the Black Corner region swiftly flashed across his mind. This attacking method and the person in front of him were nearly identical. The dark black metal chain did not stop, because Xiao Yang had guessed its identity. That cluster of black fog was extremely vicious in its attack. Hence, it had unleashed a killing move the moment it attacked. If this chain were to strike Xiao Yang's body, it was likely that his life would be immediately taken. It is really unexpected that I will end up dying in the hands of these fellows. Xiao Yang sighed with extreme fatigue in his heart. A bitterness seeped out from the corner of his mouth as he slowly shut his eyes. In this kind of situation, even Su Qian would not be able to save him in time. Your life is mine. The chain arrived quickly. However, just as it was about to penetrate Xiao Yang's heart, an ice-cold, numbing voice could suddenly be heard behind his ear. Immediately, a delicate, gentle, boneless-like hand surfaced in a strange manner and grabbed the chain firmly. The delicate hand appeared to have extended from empty space. It did not cause any fluctuations. It looked gentle and weak, yet it contained an extremely strong and fierce strength that grabbed the metal chain until the point where it could not move. The sudden help also caused everyone to be startled. Their gazes followed that flawless hand and slowly shifted. Finally, a beauty with a lovely sexy figure and a nearly perfect, bewitching face appeared in front of all their gazes. This was the feeling that the woman gave to others at first glance, with the exception of her icy-cold face. The merging of coldness and enchantment caused her to possess an unusual allure that had a deep impact on men. Her snow-white chin formed a slightly sharp incline that caused her entire body to be filled with a pride that was difficult to hide. This kind of pride was not an ordinary woman's arrogance, but an honorable haughtiness that only a woman who possessed a high status could display. Xiao Yang's eyes stared intently at the tip of the metal chain that had been magnified by a countless number of times in his eyes. His throat rolled a little as he turned his head with great difficulty. The ice-cold face of Queen Medusa immediately appeared in his eyes. Xiao Yang's mouth moved. He did not expect that the one who took action to rescue him would actually be the Queen Medusa who had been after his life. Did she really possess complicated feelings toward him after that incident? Queen Medusa's eyes did not even move a little while this thought was lingering in Xiao Yang's heart. Her other free delicate hand merely flipped and violently slammed against Xiao Yang's chest without any mercy. The large force caused the latter's completely exhausted body to be shaken until he took over 10 steps back before sitting down on the ground, looking extremely miserable. Xiao Yang grabbed his chest and let out a few soft coughs after sitting onto the ground. What did this damn woman want to do? She wanted to rescue him, yet she was this blunt. If the palm was a little stronger earlier, it was likely that it would have been able to kill him. How unfortunate. Just a little more and that bastard will be killed. Xiao Yang's gaze turned to Han Feng, who was lying on the ground with a breath remaining. He spoke regretfully within his heart. The current him was already completely exhausted. Although all he needed to do was use the ruler to slam against that fellow in order to kill him, the current him did not even have the strength to stand up. While Xiao Yang's eyes were filled with a limitless regret, Queen Medusa, who was grabbing the metal chain, suddenly lowered her head and glanced at Han Feng, whom she did not know was dead or alive. She knit her eyebrows and appeared to hate that a man was this close to her. She immediately raised her long, sleek legs in front of a countless number of gazes and heavily kicked Han Feng's waist. This kick may appear random, but the sharp wind created by her toes when it was swung smashed and formed quite a large pit on the ground. Clearly, this kick was something that could even cause a lively elite Do Huang to feel terrible, much less Han Feng, who was seriously injured. At this moment, nearly everyone believed that it was likely that Han Feng would have difficulty keeping his life even if he was reborn from someone extremely strong. Good. What a damn great kick. Xiao Yan, who appeared paralyzed as he sat, also watched Queen Medusa's sudden action with a stunned expression. Only when Han Feng heavily smashed against the enormous rock did he recover. Everyone on the plane, regardless of whether it was the experts from the Black Corner region or the Inner Academy, were all completely dumbfounded. No one had expected that the peak expert, who had dominated the Black Corner region, would actually be kicked to death by a woman. This seemed a little too comical, right? Su Qian's gaze firmly focused on Queen Medusa from the distant sky. Other people might not have sensed it, but he was able to sense that the latter's random kick seemed to contain some killing intent. Clearly, that kick she gave Han Feng did not hold the thought of simply clearing the place, but it was likely that she really wanted to kill Han Feng. Don't tell me that she also held a grudge against Han Feng. Why have I not heard that there was someone like her in the Black Corner region? Su Qian muttered doubtfully. This Han Feng would actually end up dying in the hands of a woman. If such a hopelessly stupid method of dying for him were to spread, it will really cause others to die from laughter. An ear-piercing strange laugh was emitted from the cluster of black fog, which expanded and shrank in a volatile manner. A ripple was immediately emitted from the black fog, and an unusual dark black energy surged out. It followed the chain as it swept toward Queen Medusa. Queen Medusa suddenly released her hand during the explosion. The black-colored chain suddenly turned around with a clever effort, before transforming into a vague black line that shot explosively toward the cluster of black fog. The black-colored chain passed through that cluster of black fog, causing it to ripple swiftly. It was a long while later before the ear-piercing voice that carried some gloominess was emitted. Who are you? You actually dare to meddle with the affairs of our Hall of Souls. His life is mine. No one else has the right to take it. Those pretty eyes stared at the cluster of black fog in the distance as Queen Medusa spoke faintly. I can give his corpse to you if I kill him one day. It is not possible now. What arrogant words. You are the first person in so many years who dares to speak such words to our Hall of Souls. Get lost. You won't have the opportunity to attack today. Queen Medusa completely ignored him. Her voice was still blunt and ice-cold. During the short exchange earlier, she already possessed some understanding of the other party's strength. If the other party's energy had not been a little strange, she would have longed killed him. Why would she need to speak so many unnecessary words? A Tier 6 alchemist spirit. This is really quite a great acquisition. That awful voice sounded with some satisfaction, after absorbing Han Feng's spirit into that black fog. The black fog immediately moved, and from a distance, Xiao Yan could sense a pair of eyes sweeping over him from within it. Rat. I shall allow Yao Chen's spirit to stay in your body for a period of time. At that time, our Hall of Souls will come and acquire it. TSK. Xiao Yang's expression was somewhat gloomy as he observed the strange cluster of black fog that was drifting aimlessly. He had finally been locked on to be this mysterious organization. Enjoy your remaining time. TSK. At that time, even this woman might not be able to protect you. A strange laugh sounded from varying distances. That cluster of black fog was just like a ghost. It flashed a couple of times before disappearing from the plains in front of a countless number of gazes. Xiao Yang's eyes watched the vague black fog that had disappeared into the distance. He suddenly grit his teeth and stood up. His footsteps staggered toward Han Feng's corpse. His palm touched the latter's skin, and his expression sank a moment later. Damn it. The sea heart flame has also been taken away along with the soul. He is indeed worthy of being the alliance head of the Black Alliance, by actually carrying such a high-grade storage ring. Xiao Yang lifted the corner of his mouth, and unceremoniously took that deep blue storage ring from Han Feng's finger. Storage rings were divided into high and low grades. A high-grade storage ring was extremely rare. It was an object in great demand that no supplier, even the auction houses of the Black Corner region, could fill. Even Xiao Yang had never worn a high-grade storage ring in all these years. He could only improvise, and barely manage by using a low-grade storage ring. In the past, Xiao Yang did not have a very great requirement for storage rings. However, he had begun to pay more attention to this ever since that storage ring cracked apart in a baffling manner during his training. He had always stored some precious objects within his storage ring. The last time around, he was fortunate to have the isolation of the fallen heart flame, which had prevented him from losing his precious objects. Queen Medusa's gaze was still ice-cold as she looked at Xiao Yan, who was laughing away while hugging the storage ring. She knit her eyebrows slightly, and she sighed in anguish within her heart. If she had stood idly by the side today, Xiao Yan would have had difficulty escaping death. In that case, she would have gotten revenge for her hatred toward him because of the profane act he had committed against her. However, her indifferent heart had suddenly beat wildly in the nick of time. A faint pull from deep within her spirit caused her to ultimately intervene. Damn it. This queen will kill you personally sooner or later. Medusa clenched her silver teeth with hatred. She clearly understood in her heart that given her old character, it was likely that she would add fuel to the fire by shifting the position of the attacking chain such that it was more fatal. There was no need to even mention helping Xiao Yan. However, these various hesitations that she currently felt was due to the merger of the two spirits. Although she had obtained absolute control of the body, the spirit of the heaven-swallowing python was also secretly affecting her. The heaven-swallowing python had followed beside Xiao Yan for 1 or 2 years, and was already quite attached to him. Such attachment had more or less caused some minor changes in Queen Medusa during the merger of spirits. According to a normal situation, Queen Medusa should have left and returned to the snake people race in the vast Taga desert now that she had merged with the spirit of the heaven-swallowing python and recovered her strength. Now, however, she continued to be around Xiao Yan. Such a situation was due to the influence of the attachment of the heaven-swallowing python. Xiao Yan had also sensed something when Medusa's icy gaze was staring at him. Your Majesty, thank you very much for rescuing me this time around. Xiao Yan will remember this favor. I will definitely return it in the future if I have the chance to. Xiao Yan smiled awkwardly in the face of the cold and emotionless Queen Medusa. Queen Medusa totally ignored Xiao Yan's embarrassed smile. Her gaze was indifferent as she stared at Xiao Yan. She gently tightened her delicate hand, and a colorful 7-colored energy slowly surged. Perspiration immediately filled Xiao Yan's forehead upon seeing the actions of Queen Medusa. This woman was indeed temperamental. She had just rescued him, but she was now actually planning to attack him. A rushing wind sound suddenly appeared in the sky, just as Queen Medusa took a step forward. Su Qian's elderly figure appeared in front of Xiao Yan. His gaze was cautiously looking at Queen Medusa. Cupping his hands together, he said, "Expert, may I know who you are? Can you reveal your name? You might well be an old acquaintance of our Jiunan Academy." Xiao Yan immediately sighed in relief when Su Qian appeared. He carefully shifted his body behind him and softly said, "First Elder. Be careful. This woman changes her face faster than one flips a book." The corner of Su Qian's mouth twitched involuntarily when he heard Xiao Yan's reminder. Queen Medusa halted her footsteps after Su Qian appeared. She ignored his words as her gaze coldly looked at Xiao Yan. Her tone was icy cold. "You can only repay those things that you did to me with your life. This is the last time. I will definitely not show any mercy the next time around." Queen Medusa ignored the strange expression of Su Qian as she turned around and turned into a 7-colored flowing light that shot into the sky after speaking those words. After which, she swiftly disappeared. Xiao Yan only wiped off the perspiration on his forehead when he saw Queen Medusa leave. He bitterly shook his head. Provoking such a woman really gave him a massive headache. It looked like he really needed to find some time to converse properly with her. Otherwise, just when would this endless chase end? You little fellow, you are really too bold. However, I am really curious. How did you manage to do those things to her given her strength? Su Qian turned around and looked at Xiao Yan with strange eyes. He shook his head while clicking his tongue. With his great experience, he was able to detect something from those words of Queen Medusa earlier. Xiao Yan nodded slightly as he spoke somewhat regretfully. "Unfortunately, I did not obtain the sea heart flame. That flame had already been refined by Han Feng. Therefore, the sea heart flame was taken away when that fellow dragged away Han Feng's spirit earlier. It is already not bad that there is the serene sea storage ring as compensation." Su Qian shook his head. He slowly withdrew the smile on his face and said, "However, the most important thing now is that Hall of Souls already have their eyes on you. That mysterious organization is not something that an ordinary faction can compare with. Su Qian's face involuntarily revealed a worry when he spoke up to this point. Clearly, he was also extremely afraid of the mysterious Hall of Souls. Xiao Yan smiled and spoke calmly, even if they don't come looking for me, I will end up looking for them sooner or later. This is something that I cannot escape from. Xiao Yan watched Su Qian gradually disappearing figure and smiled. A day where he collided head-on with the Hall of Souls was something that was long within his expectations. However, the thing that caused him to rejoice was that the current him already possessed the strength to protect himself and Yao Lao. If he was at his peak condition today, he believed that he would be able to force back that cluster of strange black fog. The current him possessed such strength. Originally, the Gold-Silver brothers had the ability to command them. However, they lost their courage to go against the Jiunan Academy after the matter of Han Feng. Hence, they did not dare to stand out. These two old fellows had completely disappeared the day after Han Feng's death, leaving behind a completely chaotic Black Alliance. Even the strongest within the alliance had spread their legs and fled. The days of this Black Alliance were indeed numbered. Within a short 5 days after the battle, it completely collapsed. Thus, the largest alliance faction within the Black Corner region was no more. Xiao Yang was naturally not interested in how noisy the Inner Academy currently was. Ever since he had returned to the Inner Academy, he had entered a secret chamber to undertake a retreat and recuperate. Although he had successfully killed the other party in this big fight with Han Feng, he was also quite badly injured. The moonlight stones that were inserted into the walls of a quiet secret chamber within Pan's Gate emitted a faint glow, expelling the darkness within the room. The warm light rested on the black-robed young man who was seated cross-legged, recuperating from his injuries. The breathing of the black-robed young man was extremely calm. He inhaled and exhaled, maintaining a perfect cycle. Each time a breathing cycle was completed, the surrounding space would form a slight ripple. Immediately, an extremely powerful natural energy followed his breathing and poured into his body. From the looks of it, the searing poison that has remained in my body was also completely removed during those 2 years I spent underground. Xiao Yang was startled upon seeing the faint grayish turbid air. After which, he began mumbling with some joy. That searing poison was ultimately a thorn in his heart. Although it did not cause him much harm due to it being suppressed by the heavenly flame, it was likely that no one would be completely reassured if such a lethal poison remained in their bodies. Therefore, it was only natural that Xiao Yang could not hide the joy in his heart upon seeing that the searing poison had actually completely disappeared. My injuries have already fully healed. From the looks of it, I spent quite a long time in retreat. Xiao Yang smiled slightly as he sensed the surging Do Qi that filled his body. Xiao Yang's true strength was merely around that of a 4 or 5-star Do Ling when he was dragged underground. Due to various reasons, however, his strength had suddenly soared to its current peak at the Do Wang class. Although he had spent 2 years, this speed could be called frightening. Moreover, it was the first time that Xiao Yang had experienced this kind of situation, where he suddenly achieved something so quickly. Hence, his control over his strength still possessed some gaps when compared with other expert Do Wangs. Even though this was the case, Xiao Yang's strength did soar. Hence, before he could completely control the strength of the Do Wang class, he needed to forget about trying to gain great improvement. After all, only by controlling the current strength available would one be able to take another step forward. The deep thought on Xiao Yang's face slowly disappeared and he sighed. He understood that he could not rush these things. Moreover, the current him did indeed need to familiarize and increase his control of many things. A cluster of jade-green flame surfaced on Xiao Yang's hand following low, deep sound. He stared at this new flame, which was born from the merger of 2 kinds of flame, and was somewhat absent-minded. Since this heavenly flame was born from the merger of heavenly flames, it was likely that it was not ranked on the heavenly flame ranking. After all, the flame mantra was not something that everyone had practiced. Hence, Xiao Yang was not even aware of what its name was. He struggled with this for a while, feeling great interest as he strived to give it a name. Glazed Lotus Heart Flame. This simple name caused Xiao Yang to feel somewhat excited. It was likely that there were not many people who possessed the qualification to give a new heavenly flame a name in this world. Perhaps, in the future, this kind of flame would be ranked on the heavenly flame ranking, when he became someone at the peak of the continent. Xiao Yan's finger habitually rubbed that serene sea storage ring on his finger. He suddenly recalled something, and he flicked his finger on the storage ring. Immediately, a dark black ancient scroll appeared in his hand. The scroll was perfectly round, appearing just like a cylinder. He could not find any spot to open it. However, the dark, deep glow that faintly seeped out from it allowed him to know that it was extraordinary. According to what Sun had said back then, it was something that could only be opened after one possessed the strength of a Do Wang. Xiao Yan was extremely curious. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.